We're like the movie Twins, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Danny DeVito. That's
Yeah.
us. We are completely different people. Andy's fourth generation entrepreneur. I'm a corporate finance refugee, 14 years at Procter & Gamble, 14 years at another big company. And we met at a networking events and we kept bumping into each other. He wrote his first book. And then we started talking about, I'm going to write a second book about numbers. Whenever we bumped into each other, we're going to write a book. We're going to write a book. Finally, we say, hell yeah, we're going to write the book.
Everybody, welcome to another episode of High Stakes with Steve Rozenberg. As you know, one of the best things I love about this show is just getting to know people. You know, I've realized that, myself, being an airline pilot, flying all over the world, traveling to, every continent except Antarctica, and getting to meet people, I've realized that everybody has a story. Like, everybody has a current where they're living. They have a past that's trailing behind them, and they have a future that they haven't met yet. And sitting in a restaurant or a bar in Germany or in South America and just watching the world go by, I've always realized that if you just take a couple minutes and you talk to the person next to you, you realize, man, this person has a pretty cool freaking story. Or I'd never want to be this guy. He has the worst freaking luck in the world, and probably somewhere in between, right? So today on the show, we've got Andy and Lynn. Guys, thanks for being here today. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Joy being here.
So tell the audience who you are, what you guys do, and then we'll kind of dig into it from there.
Yeah, I'm a fourth generation entrepreneur. Been a business owner for 10 years now. And recently, Lynn and I went on an adventure to write a book together about numbers. For all intents and purposes, we talk about numbers and data and why business owners are intimidated by them. And so that's why we're here today. I've been doing podcasts for years, and this is my second book I wrote. So what really brings us together, the two of us, and what brings us here today is really talk about our entrepreneurial journey and how we found ourselves writing a book to support other business owners.
Okay, so let me just dig into this here. So I'm a big believer, data and metrics run companies, not gut feelings and emotions. So we're aligned with that.
That's correct.
You guys don't look like you would hang out with each other. How did you guys meet? First of all, let's just start with that one.
We are, we're like the movie Twins, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Danny DeVito. That's us. We are completely different people. Andy's fourth generation entrepreneur. I'm a corporate finance refugee, 14 years at Procter & Gamble, 14 years at another big company, started my own business. And we met at a networking events and about 5 years or so ago, and we kept bumping into each other at, this group that Andy was leading for a while, kept seeing him there. And then he wrote his first book. And then we started talking about, I'm going to write a second book about numbers. And it became this running joke for a while. Whenever we bumped into each other, we're going to write a book. We're going to write a book. Finally, we say, hell yeah, we're going to write the book.
Wow, that's cool. Very cool. Okay, so before we get to the book conversation, because I love numbers, I love books, I love being an airline pilot, systems, processes, all that stuff. But I guess, Andy, let me start with you. Like when people introduce you, right? They talk about your successes, but if I were to ask who you were without a resume, without all the accolades, what would you say who that is?
Who am I without a resume, without an accolade? I am a person that struggles with confidence, who constantly seeks self-validation that I'm worth the time and energy I put into myself and others. That's the truth. It's like, what is the why? And because I've struggled and even suffered at times, and I've seen the light, I now want to become the light. And I'm a firm believer. I love what you said before the show. A lot of people spend time talking about their past and never really living in their present. And I spend my life focused on the future, and then I get to live in the present. Every year I have a mantra, right? I'm military background, so your motto, your mantra, right? It's 3 to 5 words. You yell it, when you're at your deepest and darkest. When we were in Iraq, our mantra was 2 words. It was too easy, right? So whatever happened, whatever obstacle we faced, the answer was always too easy, right? Jocko talks about, whenever you're faced with new information, just say good. All right, good. All right, things went to shit. Good. The numbers didn't come out the way we wanted to. Good. We're running late for this thing. Good. Right. And so I have a lifetime mantra I live by, and then every year I have one. So a couple of years ago, it was execute, execute, execute. I realized that throughout my life, I had a lot of ideas and goals, and I never executed. This year, as we're wrapping up 2025, my mantra the entire year is, who am I becoming? And so when I'm faced with opportunities, decisions, I go back to that. That's my reorientation. Who am I becoming? And so when you ask, who am I? Right? It's not about the awards, the accolades, what I've done. It's who am I becoming? And to you said, I've been very fortunate to travel, mostly in the States here, and it comes down to people. I love having conversations with people. I live by the adage, when one man teaches, two people learn. And so that's why I take advantage of opportunities to do podcasts, and what's led to my consulting business, which led to writing a book. It's the opportunity to, what is my legacy, right? On average, your name, right? There's two times you die: the day that they put you in the ground, and the day that your name is spoken for the last time. And on average, the last time someone speaks your name is 75 years after the day they put you in the ground. And that sounds about right. Right? I talk about being fourth generation entrepreneur. I know 3 generations back. I don't know that fourth generation back, that fifth generation. Don't know much about them. And so, how do I carry the legacy from my great grandfather so his name lasts longer than 75 years? And then, moreover, how does my name last more than 75 years? And so that is who I am today, and that is how I see the world and where I'm going.
It's interesting. I've heard a thing where I was at an event, and I know who Alex Ramosi is, but he was speaking, and he said,
love Alex Ramosi.
Yeah. And he was talking about Rockefeller. And he said, does anyone know who he is and what he did? A couple of hands were raised. And he said, what's interesting about that question is he said, during his heyday, he was the richest person on earth, essentially. And today he would have dwarfed pretty much anyone if his wealth would have expanded at the same rate that everyone else is. He goes, but yet he was alive 80 years ago and no one even knows his name. They don't even know who he is. And that was the richest guy on the planet at the time. So you think about, in 80 years from now, would people not know who Elon Musk is? Maybe. I don't know.
Well, let's look at someone from the same time period. Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
Although the English, or the American version is Carnegie, but the Scottish is Carnegie. Everyone in business knows who Dale Carnegie is because he did something to influence other business owners, right? So the Rockefellers have, gobs of wealth, and yet how does that help me? Right? Again, let's go back to that adage. People don't remember what you said or what you did. They remember how they felt when they were around you. And so for anybody that's ever been inspired by Dale Carnegie or been to Carnegie Hall, that is something, versus Rockefeller's, to your point. Rockefeller had more money than the Federal Reserve at one point, and yet 80 years later, he's a question on a multiple choice, test in, ninth grade history.
Yeah. And, it's funny, you talk about people buying, I've learned that all buying decisions, every decision we make, buying either, and not necessarily with our wallet, it could be buying a concept, buying a friendship, buying what someone's telling me. It's always triggered by one thing, an emotional reaction. So whenever we buy, we are buying based on our emotions. That's causing the trigger for us to move forward. And so, like, you're right. When all of a sudden, when we sit there and go, who is that guy? Like, what? That's not causing any emotions. And it goes back to your point about business. Yes, business is data, but business is built on people. People build businesses. Data basically gives you the scorecard as to whether or not you're a profit or a nonprofit, charity business or not. So let me ask you this: is there some part of your journey, and it sounds like there probably is, that no one claps about, no one knows about, but actually changed your trajectory and changed to the person that I'm looking in front of today?
Yeah. I would say not that no one knows about it because I talk about it. 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, I was in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and I was a master resiliency trainer in the Army, which means I train soldiers how to be vulnerable, speak up, share their experiences, right? For 10 years in the military, I thought I had to be Billy Badass and be the toughest guy in the block. And then I learned, no, asking for support is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. And so soldiers came to me looking for support, and I voiced the concerns up the chain. As the Army does, and sometimes puts leaders in charge that on paper look like great leaders and in actuality aren't. And my advocation for soldiers, my advocation for the standard, got me kicked out of my platoon, eventually kicked out of my company. And this is while I was deployed. So I quit my job before I left for the deployment because I knew I wasn't going to be going back to it. I knew I was going to be starting a business. I had my military career threatened. My originally was up to initially I was barred from reenlistment, and basically my career was coming to an end all at once, and I was going through a divorce on the personal side. So now I'm losing all these identities. I was no longer employed. I was no longer a soldier, or potentially not going to be a soldier. I was no longer a husband, right? And so I had a rough year plus going through that in the military, then another year going through a divorce thereafter. And all the while is when I started my business and became a father. So my daughter was 5 months old when I left for the deployment. She was 18 months old when I got back, and all of a sudden I'm a single father. And I was at rock bottom, and nobody knew who I was. I hadn't started putting out content really to speak of. No one knew who I was, and really I didn't know who I was. All I knew was where I was. I didn't want to be, and it worked out. Right, I started my business. I survived my divorce. I have a beautiful, amazing 11-year-old daughter now. Um, I got promoted in the Army, and the people in question, the first sergeant and the commander, both got relieved of their positions. So it all worked out. Yet when I was down and out, I was toxic. No one wanted to be near me. Even the military, even the people that I represented, the people I stood up for, as soon as they started throwing arrows my way, those people scattered. And so that was a great reminder to me that at the end of the day, all you have is yourself. And it's my job to make myself happy and successful. And then when I achieve that, then I can bring others along for the journey versus this inverse where that external validation is more important than the internal acceptance.
So let me ask you this: what did you believe? Like what did that version of you believe, and what did you have to let go of? Right, not who you had to become, but who did you have to stop being to shed
Yeah,
that skin?
no, it's real simple. I believe that as long as I took care of people, people would take care of me, and that ain't real, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the military. You're the old adage: you look to your left and right, and that's your brother and sister. I had a different experience in Iraq. That was true. In Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, that was not true. So again, that idea that when I take care of others, they'll take care of me, and that's no different than employees. That's no different than vendors. That's no different than customers. That's no different than business partners. At the end of the day, right? I have my boundaries and no expectations of others. And learning that, that's taken 41 years to figure that out.
So let me flip to Lynn here. I got Lynn. So you came from corporate America, right?
Yep.
How long were you in corporate America for?
I spent 14 years with Procter and Gamble, and there's a company here in Wisconsin. When I left P&G, I joined this company here in Wisconsin, Grande Cheese Company, and I was there for 14 years. So I had 28 years of decent sized companies, and the structure, the planning, the normal career paths up those areas before leaving.
So we kind of have two stories here, right? We've got the story of corporate America, leaving corporate America, and we've got, military, other structured, leaving that, and both kind of merging into one unified, we'll say, vision or thought process. But Lynn, if you did not choose this path and sitting here today, where do you think you would be right now?
I would, I would probably have gone had I not gone into the world of starting my own business and moving into another company. I would have stayed in corporate America But one of the things that ultimately I decided that was really important to me, I wanted to put my paw prints on some organization. That's why I left P&G. They treat you very well from a compensation standpoint. I had a lot of great experiences. Spent a year and a half in Switzerland with them. Had my family over there. I worked up and down the P&L. I saw parts of this country like you wouldn't believe in traveling with them. So again, kind of like the idea of getting to talk to people, getting to see and discover. I would have been happy doing that, but I had a series of jobs. I did not have a career plan that I was going to make an impact on anybody. I left Grande Cheese Company and they gave me the opportunity to basically build a proprietary data set based on the strength of the brand. And we boiled marketing and sales operations into 8 key numbers that became the basis of strategy, our comp program for our salespeople, and our trade program for our distributor partners. And when you start having everybody throughout this supply chain making money off the same 8 numbers, it's just fascinating how important they become. There was no question where they came from, what they meant, or what they were going to be used for. And we doubled the rate of sales growth for 3 consecutive years.
So I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Andy. What did you have to let go of to walk away from, a great career, for lack of a better term, as far as on paper, corporate America wise?
Well, kind of like, like Andy, Andy said he got kicked out of the army, or basically, after a while with Grande Cheese Company, I'd reached a point where it was routine, and I ended up working for somebody that I didn't truly respect. I became the bad apple. I started looking. They made a decision to get rid of me before I left them. And so the first time I really met Andy at one of these events, they were talking about writing books. And I said, I have a book in my head, and it's like the behaviors of business. And the first line of it was going to be, my own bad behavior got me fired. So that was the book that I started to write in my head a long time ago. And so where I would have been, I probably would have gone back there. But then after I left Grande, or they left me, whatever, I started one consulting job through another organization here in Milwaukee, and which led to another event. And I started thinking like, hey, I could do this. And then I confused the hell out of people. And I would tell some people I met my story. It's like, yes, I'm looking for a job in corporate finance again. Tell other people, hey, I'm thinking about starting my own business. And finally, a guy named Lori Rifkin looked at me and said, Lynn, you're confusing the hell out of people. This is small Milwaukee. People talk. You're meeting a lot of people. Frickin' make a decision. Are you going to go on your own, or are you going to look for a job? I went out on my own, and I've never looked back. In fact, I find myself now certifiably unemployable again. No one else. I can never work for anybody else.
Let me ask you guys this: as you guys kind of came together and started, meeting of the minds and building this thing out, and I'll ask you guys both the same question. Like, was there a moment that you guys were ever ready to quit and do the U-turn back into what, the devil you know or the devil you don't know, right? The devil you know was behind you. What you don't know is in front of you. Was there ever moments when you were thinking of quitting? Obviously you didn't, but did that come up at all?
No. I can jump in and say that right away. I mean, what's been amazing about this whole journey, the two of us working together, we're targeting and want to help small business owners with something that we both have a passion for, helping them understand their numbers, making themselves better business people. Even though we approach it from 2 separate perspectives, we're both fractional CFOs. We work with this, and we virtually agreed every step along the way what we were going to cover, what to include. It was easy.
Yeah, I would say during this particular journey, no, it's been pretty seamless. It's been about a 2-year project. I mean, it really has. It's coming up on 2 years now that we've been on this project. As a business owner, I'm 10 years in now. 10 years since I, to Lynn's point, became certifiably unemployable. I used to say I'm uncoachable, unmanageable, unemployable. And about 6 years ago, a mentor of mine convinced me I was very coachable. I had convinced myself I wasn't. Again, the thought that I had to be the smartest person in the room, and so I'm very unemployable still. There was a time though in 2020 So I was part of a franchise organization in 2016 through 2019, and we ended that relationship at the beginning of 2020. We were phasing out at the end of 19, and I was launching my speaking business January 1 of 2020. I had a bunch of gigs lined up. Then shit hit the fan, and I put myself in a really tough spot at the perfectly wrong time. I exited the franchise, which was I was making very good money, on February 29th of 2020, and as we know, March
Ouch.
changed everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And then I trusted the assets of my business and my liabilities to somebody that was launching his business, and did not have the gumption to do it for the 2 years. I needed someone to replace me for 2 years while I sat through a non-compete. And at that point, I go, okay, I was put on this earth to run a junk removal company. That's my background, my discipline. I've been doing it all my life, and now I'm told legally I can't for 2 years. And whether the non-compete is enforceable or not, I'm a man of integrity and word. When I sign a contract, I sign a contract. When I say I'm not going to do it for 2 years, I'm not going to do it for 2 years, right? I'll do what's necessary to make sure my daughter eats, and also make sure I don't risk it, right? And so I played right. And there was a time where I had an opportunity to go back in the Army on orders for 6 months. And I looked at it and I go, okay, I can go back to the Army for 6 months and I can mail it in. Like I've been in the Army long enough. I was high enough rank. It was a, desk job, and I can mail this thing in. I could sit there all day and probably work on my business next to my government computer and do the little bit of work I needed to limp along. I knew I wasn't. In my heart, why do that? I'm not interested. I'm not. I'm not one that can live a lie minute in and minute out, because it eats me inside. And so there was absolutely those moments of doubt, right? And there was days I was counting days of money. I remember there was one point where I thought about a drawer. I had a drawer that had change in it. It was like $17 in change, and I was like, all right, if I take that to the bank, how far does that last me? And mind you, my burn rate was about $6,000 a day at that time. So $17, it would have been gone by the time I got to the bank and back.
Yeah.
And yet that's where I like, that's how far I got in my brain. And I still have that change drawer, and it still has been untouched. But that's really how. I mean, this was PPP and ERC and essential and non-essential, all this shit, and it's like, well, no, I've been in business 10 years, and I've lost a few businesses. I had a videography company at the time. I had a rage room that got shut down. We launched a rage room in January 1 of 2020. All that got shut down, and I kept everybody employed. I'm proud that everybody that worked for me, they left on their own accord. I didn't let anybody go. And going back to that, what did I learn? As I sit here and reflect now, I obviously didn't learn it then in Gitmo, that as long as I take care of people, they'll take care of me, because almost everybody, sparing one or two people, everybody I took care of for those 2 3 years left me in a non-ceremonious way. So to that
Yeah.
end, I'm still learning that lesson,
Let me
right?
ask you a question. So this is to either of you. Let's talk about the people who own businesses, right? The people you wrote the book for.
Mm.
Um, what belief system do you think keeps them stuck? Like what is it that you see that causes them? You're like, there's another one. There's another one. I have my thoughts. I'm just curious what you guys think.
Yeah. I think a lot of times they tell themselves things from a perspective where they don't really think about the whole picture. They tell themselves, this accounting is too difficult. I'm not a numbers person. I just don't like my numbers. And those are the things that we see all the time. And when you start talking about numbers that way, why do they have that belief? And why do they think that good financial management or understanding this is so difficult? I think it's an awareness thing. You basically thought this is accounting and this is finance, or this is accounting and it's hard. It's specialized. It's tedious. And people say, I want to just make the best muffins on earth. I don't want to know all this stuff. So they never make the time for it.
It's not sexy. I mean, Lynn made a comment in the book. He's like, people don't write inspiring posts on LinkedIn about depreciation schedules. And yet I had a conversation this morning with my wife about depreciation schedules because she has a business and she was very adamant. I was like, hey, I can take over the books. I'll do them. I'm probably a B plus A minus bookkeeper. I can get us there. And I'm like a D plus accountant, right? And I'm a A plus CFO, right? So like I do it? Yeah, right. And so I told her I'll take over the books. This was back this summer when we launched our VRBO. And she kept kicking the can. She's like, nope, I want to learn it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to learn it. I'm going to do it. And in the last 2 weeks, she finally logged in her QuickBooks, and she's been so proud of her. Between QuickBooks tutorials and a little chat GPT, she's got the basics of bookkeeping down. And what it comes down, she's like, man, I worked really hard at it. Like, it's not fun, right? We go into business to have fun. We go into business to change our passion. We go into business to make an impact on our community. Numbers aren't sexy. Numbers aren't exciting. When you're knee deep in your numbers, a lot of people feel like they're not working, they're not moving the needle, and so there's nothing about it where people are malicious, right? Or some people avoid. There's no doubt. There's some people that avoid holistically, right, and to a point where it's detrimental to their business. Most people, they're annoyed, they're afraid, they're intimidated, right? And so that's why the book we called Stop Avoiding Your Numbers, because ultimately the action is their avoidance. So my wife, my beautiful wife, I chose to spend the rest of my life with, started a business, and she kicked the can for 3 or 4 months because it's not fun. And it's like, in my head, it's like, why did she do them like the last 2 weeks? Because it's been like 17 degrees out in Wisconsin, and she, there's nothing to do in the yard. Right? Like, she finally was like, all right, got to get them done by the end of the year. And now she actually had fun doing them because she's self-taught, she's a growth-minded person, all these amazing things, and yet, when it's 75 degrees on a Saturday afternoon, when she's working in the yard at 10, 11 o'clock at night, that's who she is, right? So me, Friday nights and Sunday nights, oh, I look at data. I love me some data. 7:30 on a Friday night, you can catch me with a cup of decaf coffee looking at a P&L. That is a wonderful Friday night. Yeah. My wife works Friday nights, so that's why it works. I'm not avoiding my wife.
But all these people just say, I'm not a numbers person. Yeah. You bring it back to them. It's like, okay, do you ever want to be late? You're looking at numbers to make sure you got 15 minutes to get there. You wonder why you got that speeding ticket? Oh, there's a number. You were going 75 and a 55. You're gonna make some cookies for the kids. That oven's got to be on 4 1/4. You bake for 8 minutes. So but when you start bringing it down to that level and say a business works in the same way, you get paid a paycheck, you got steady money coming in, you kind of know where your big expenses are going, and you're wasting a lot of money. You have to save for your future versus what you have now. And when you can start making it personal to people, that's when they say, look, your business isn't that hard. You just have to have the same awareness, the same comfort in understanding what they represent. And once you do that, people can generally move forward pretty quickly.
It's interesting, your guys' perspectives, and I think it's great. And I've always learned that finance is the language of business. That's the language that our businesses speak, whatever you do in the world, doesn't matter. In Europe, it's a euro. In Argentina, it's a peso. That's the language. I think what you guys are talking about, I don't know if you've ever heard the term, your favorite struggle. And the favorite struggle is, that's when people say like, oh, I'm just not good at numbers. But that's the lie they tell themselves to make themselves feel better, instead of saying, I don't know it. Maybe I'm not the right disc profile for it, whatever. And that's the shield that we use to protect, to say, I have no idea what my business is doing in numbers, because I'm just not a numbers person, guys. Like, hey, you know what? I'm not a Monday morning person. I don't like meetings on Monday. That's the lie that we protect and shield, is called your favorite struggle, right? And so a lot of people, finances, and I'm a big believer that you play to your strengths and you outsource your weaknesses. It could take me 4 years to go to school to get an accounting degree, and I'd probably be middle to average in accounting after 4 years of my life, or I could take a couple hours and I can hire someone. And in those couple hours, I can hire someone who's an accountant that knows what they're doing, and I've just solved the problem. And I think a lot of times people don't realize that is probably the number one problem. If they can't tell you what their business is doing, financially, P&L forecasting, all these things. How do you even know if what you're focusing on it? And, I've got a coaching program, and one of the first things we do is we review their financials, their P&L, sadly, a lot of them don't even know how to spell those things, so they don't know what they are. But the ones that do, and we'll tell them, like, you don't have a this problem based on your numbers, you have a that problem. And they're just like, oh, how'd you know? And it's like, because the numbers are telling a story. The numbers are telling us the story. You're just not reading the story. Mm-hmm. You're going to say something, Andy?
You're basically, you've summed up our book right there. Right, you've never seen our book. You haven't seen the back jacket. The back jacket is exactly that. We talk about it. Your numbers tell a story. It's time for you to understand how to decipher it. That's it. You talk about financials. Lynn and I speak that language, right? We have two different dialects, right? We speak the language. Lynn is corporate finance, 28 years of doing the thing. I'm broke and could not afford a bookkeeper, so I figure out how to do the thing. And I watched my parents fight every Tuesday night for 20 years, struggling to do the thing. My mom and I joked last night. I never heard this part of the story. This did not make it in the book. Part of this made in the book, but she told me the reason why she did accounting with my father on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. was because she coached volleyball at 7:30. So she knew that by 6:30 the meeting was over. Because if she would have done it on Wednesday night where she didn't coach volleyball, the meeting would have never lasted. It would have gone into the next morning, So that's what she told me. She goes, because we could handle about a half an hour, because he would come with a bunch of receipts, and she'd say, well, we owe this money. Where's your invoices this week? Oh, yeah, I got to get checks from this guy or that guy. She says, well, where's the invoice? Where's the this? Where's the that, right? They never understood. They were trying to put 4 kids through Catholic school. And so I learned very early in my life, I was like, I don't want to be broke. So let's start with that. How do I not be broke? Oh, money. Okay. Well, how do I make money? Okay, this is how I make money. How do I keep my money? Oh, that's how I keep my money. I joke back in 2019, I used to do about 45 networking events a month because I was the business development guy. 45 networking events plus another 20 to 30 coffees. My goal was 75 touches a month. That's a lot of, it's 3 things a day, essentially, working days, 3.5 things a day. That's what I did. I was business development. And I was having this conversation with my wife the other day, and she goes, I thought you loved going to networking events. I go, no, I love building my business. And networking events were merely a stepping stone
just a tool
to get there. It was a tool, no different than numbers. 9 years ago, I sat in my office for the month of December learning QuickBooks because I wanted to get smart on my numbers. To your point, you said about that CFO, or even you, let's just say could you go to school for 4 years and get an accounting degree and have a B- level, right? I'm a B- accounting student. The lowest grade I got in college was a B- in accounting. Okay. So could you do it? Yeah. Or could you hire someone that can interpret the data? Absolutely. Can you sit down for 2 to 4 hours a month and have somebody ask you questions and give you answers based on what your financials are telling you? Well, yeah, that sounds pretty good. That's what we do. Yeah. In our book, the first 2 chapters are about what's your vision and why you got into business. That's more interesting than what your cash flows statement says for the Q1 of last year, right? That's the point, is people are intimidated by numbers because they look at them as numbers. As soon as we tell people, hold on, it's a story. People love stories. They get excited. Ooh, how does it end? Where's it going? Where does the hero, what does the hero do when they face the dragon? It's like, well, that's all in your numbers. It's all in your data. It's all in your scorecards. Once you start looking at your metrics, the story evolves. And then I hear CEOs talk, and CEOs, to your point, they found this comfort zone, this place of passivity, this sham shield, the bullshit story they told themselves. Oh, I'm bad at numbers. Oh, that's my best employee. Oh, I sell a shitload of that. And it's like the data doesn't support that, or the data does support that. The data don't lie. The data is unbiased. The data does not care about anything else other than the truth.
Yeah, I talk about. Go ahead, Lynn.
Now, I was going to say, before we say, that we're not here, it is not our objective to make you a finance expert or accounting expert. We want to make you aware that this is what you can, could, should be doing with your numbers, and making sure that you know enough to question other people who are providing you that accounting service or that bookkeeping service. I had a woman I worked with her for 6 months. First time we got together, she said, Lynn, I don't understand this. I paid my accountant and she paid them $9,000 over 9 months. And she said, I don't know what I'm getting for it. Took a quick look at it. And next time we got together, I said, Laura, we're going to take 4 pictures today, send them to your CPA firm, and tell them we would like to talk about a refund. They never called her back. They never emailed her back. They never even sent her anything, even responded to her. 7 weeks later, she got a check for $6,000. Mm-hmm. The 4 pictures out of their QuickBooks were so damning, said that they paid, that they did nothing that she was supposed to. So then we got her onto the path of, okay, well, this is what your accountant should be doing. These are the questions you should be asking them. This is what you should be looking at each month. And a couple months later, we were done. She knew enough to get started on her way. But even though she trusted a regional CPA firm, they weren't doing their job, and she didn't know what questions to ask. That's the value that we're bringing to people.
Let me ask you guys a question, and I think I'd like to hear both of you guys, because you guys have different tracks to where you are today. Is there a truth to business or life, that you wish someone told you a long time ago, that if you could go back and talk to all these early entrepreneurs that are getting into business, that, one thing I always notice is, and I always ask, I speak at a lot of events, and I'm like, do you ever wonder where your passion went? Right? You started this business because you were passionate. You were fired up. I see all these faces in the crowd, and you guys are beat up. You guys are worn into the ground, and you don't even know why. Where's your passion? And somebody once, and I kind of think of it below the line there. I thought they were blaming. He's like, no one ever told me this. And my answer is why is it anyone's responsibility to tell you anything? You're a big boy. You decided I'm going to be an entrepreneur. You took on that responsibility. But then I thought about it, and I thought, okay, is there a responsibility at some level for people like us that have had some success? I've been doing this 20 years. You guys have been doing this a long time. Is there something that to give back, pay it forward, whatever term we want to use, to go back to help people and say, look, guys, it's kind of like building the foundation of a house. It's hard. It's a lot of work. It sucks. It's dirty. And once it's done, it's covered up and no one is going to see it. But if you don't have it, the house will crumble. Is there something that you think that you need to tell people that say, if you don't have this, you will crumble?
Go ahead, Lynn.
I've up until 6 months ago, I really never thought about myself as an educator. I was always very good at educating people. I taught classes for people at Procter & Gamble, did all this other kind of stuff. But if I had one thing to tell people now, there's this huge difference between finance and accounting. And the difference is you have to have a bookkeeper because you have to pay taxes. So that's not an option. But then you look at every decent sized company, the number 2, 3, or 4 person in that organization is going to be someone called the CFO. That CFO employs more finance people than they do, because then you really look at it, then the team that you start with only looks backwards. So you as the CFO of your business have only the perspective of accountant, a tax planner, and a banker. Banker looks forward because they want to make sure they get paid back. But the real challenge in running your business is looking forward. What are my margins today? What can I do to make them better? How much am I spending today? When can I hire? How am I grow? How am I going to fund this? And it's all forward-looking stuff. But that's not what the people on most entrepreneurs' team ever talk about. They're living in the past. It really comes down to that simple analogy. When you're pedaling your bike down the street with potholes and traffic coming, how much time do you spend looking back? That's all the bookkeeper, the accountant, the CPA, that's all they do. They look back. And that's why then we get so sucked into the day-to-day challenge, we don't stop to work on our business. And again, come back to the old cliche, you got to spend more time working on your business. Well, that means looking forward in your business, not in your business, what's happening today, let alone what happened last month.
I like that. Andy?
Yeah, it's something along the lines of nobody will care about you, your future, and your finances as much as you need to care about it. And the second you rely on somebody else, you're passing on your insecurities, your inadequacies to somebody else. There are days. There's a guy. I'm on a CEO roundtable. There's a guy in my roundtable that has generational wealth, and there are days where I'm like, man, he could give me $1 million, and it wouldn't change his life whatsoever. And think of all the good I can do with that. And man, that's like me looking around my desk for an easy button to smash it. Right? That's me asking my accountant to tell me what to do with my money. It's not their money, it's my money. That's me asking my employees to do the things I'm willing to do. Why would they do it when I'm not willing to do it myself? And so the that that fear-based mindset I have is always looking for the easy answer, is looking for somebody else to take the responsibility. At the end of the day, when you raise your hand, declare to the world, change your LinkedIn, whatever, that you're going to be a business owner, it's on you. One of the things that we were very conscious of in this book is when we first started writing it, we wrote it for the entrepreneur. And I love the word entrepreneur. I preach it. I'm a fourth generation entrepreneur. And through the course of the book writing, we realized that there's a lot of people that are entrepreneur. It's a pretty low bar to be an entrepreneur. It's a low bar to be entrepreneurial. Be a business owner. Because once you're a business owner, you take ownership for every decision that happens under your watch. And once you understand the magnitude of that, you're ready to be a business owner. 83% of business owners fail in 10 years. 90% of businesses never make it to $1 million. 99% of businesses never make it to $2 million. I've grown several businesses. I've grown some to 2 million. I've had some that failed within 5 years. I've done it all. And when I was at my worst, I wanted somebody else to pick up the flag and go. That's not what I signed up for.
Mm-hmm.
The day I became a business owner is the day I declared that I'm going to be out in front of this army. I'm going to carry the flag. I'm going to persevere. And again, it goes to that, one of those first questions you asked me, what did I have to shed? I got to shed, I got to shed the belief that other people will take care of me as much as I take care of them. As a business owner, it is selfless. People get paychecks when you don't. People go home when you don't. People get to sleep worry-free when you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And what a gift that is. What a gift that is that I get to employ people. What a gift that is that I always have work in front of me. What a gift that is that I have something I care about when I go home at night. Because that's the inverse. And I always ask people, what's the inverse? What's the inverse of being a business owner? What's the inverse of being out in front of the army? Being another number. Having someone tell me what to do. Having a job, a job. I am unemployable and I am happy. And so that's the ultimate advice. When you're a business owner, it's on you. Either rise to the occasion or fall to your inadequacies. It's your choice.
I love it. I love it. I could talk all day with you guys. Tell us again, the name of the book is what?
It's Stop Avoiding Your Numbers, The Guide to Financial Confidence for Small Business Owners.
I love that. And where can people get it? We'll have it in the show notes, but where else can they get it?
Amazon's the simplest place to find it.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you did as well. Again, I always try to make it a little different than the average, and hopefully I lived up to that with you guys. I just want to thank you both for your time today. I think more people need to hear more about the numbers of business, the language of business, because you can move to another country, you can do whatever you want, you can change your businesses, but the language is still the same. It doesn't change, right? The voice inflection may change, the words may change, but the language is still the language. And it sounds like you guys have a great foothold on that. Any last parting words for the show?
Andy, go ahead.
Mark Twain said it best. The two most important days of your life are the day that you're born and the day you figure out why. Go find your why. Everyone's why is different. It's, there's 8 billion unique people in this world. 80% of them never figure out their why. So be that top 20% of growth-minded people that figure out their why and pursue it relentlessly.
Love it.
Yeah.
Lynn, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to come back to, as Andy kind of alluded to it, nobody ever is going to care about you or your business more than you. And so when you start farming this out without taking responsibility for it, if I could just say right now, look, if your numbers suck and you don't understand them and you don't want to understand them, that's the day. Swallow the pride, get rid of the PRIDE, and just find some help. Because it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of the realization is that I'm responsible for this. Take it on yourself.
I love it.
And then, yep.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being on today. We will have the book and information in the show notes. Definitely recommend it. I think everybody can learn more about numbers and more about the business, and it's vital. You can have the best product in the world, but if you don't know your margins, if you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter. So, guys, thank you for being on. Everybody, on behalf of Andy and Lynn and myself, I want to thank you for another episode of High Stakes with Steve Rozenberg, and we will be back next week with another episode. We'll see you guys then. Bye-bye.